They say that home is where the heart is. But what happens when the home you built with your own blood and sweat becomes a cage? What happens when the people who were supposed to be your shield become the ones who pierce your soul? My name is Mira. Today I am standing at a crossroads, looking back at 10 years of a life that felt like a long, suffocating dream. If you are listening to this, perhaps you are going through something similar. Perhaps you feel the same bitterness rising in your throat every time you try to smile for the world. This is not just my story. It is the story of every woman who chose silence over war, until the silence itself became a weapon. I remember the day I entered the Kanna mansion. It was raining, a soft, gentle drizzle that made the jasmine flowers in my hair smell even sweeter. I was 23, a gold medalist in economics, full of dreams. When Akash held my hand to help me step over the threshold, I felt like the luckiest girl alive. His mother, Savitri Devi, stood at the door with a silver plate. She smiled, but her eyes didn't reach her face. They were scanning me, not as a daughter-in-law, but as an acquisition. A new piece of furniture that needed to be placed in the right corner. "Mira," she whispered, her voice like silk dipped in ice. "In this house, we don't just bring our belongings, we bring our obedience. Do you understand?" I nodded, smiling through my veil. I thought it was just the tradition of a big family. I didn't know that obedience was a code word for disappearing. The first morning, the crack in the mirror. The very next morning, the reality began to seep through the gold-plated walls. I woke up at 5 a.m. as instructed. I wore a heavy silk sari, my bangles clinking in the quiet hallway. I went to the kitchen to make tea. "Stop right there," a voice snapped. It was Ria, Akash's younger sister. She was leaning against the doorway, looking at me with disdain. "In this house, the servants make the tea. The daughters-in-law serve it. And remember, Mom doesn't like sugar. She says sweetness makes people weak." I handed the tray to Savitri Devi 10 minutes later. She took a sip, looked at me, and then, without breaking eye contact, poured the hot tea into the flower pot next to her. "It's lukewarm, Mira. Just like your personality seems to be. Go back, make it again. And this time, make sure it's hot enough to burn." I stood there, stunned. I looked at Akash, who was sitting right there, reading the newspaper. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word. That was the first time I felt it, a tiny drop of bitterness, like a single drop of poison in a glass of pure water. The career sacrifice. 2 weeks later, I received an appointment letter from a top MNC. I was ecstatic. I ran to Akash, showing him the paper. "Akash, look, I got the job. The package is amazing." Akash looked at the paper, then at me. For a second, I saw a flash of pride in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished when he heard his mother's footsteps. Savitri Devi walked in, took the letter from my hand, and read it slowly. Then she did something I will never forget. She took her gold lighter from the table and set the corner of my appointment letter on fire. "Mom, what are you doing?" I gasped, trying to grab it. "I am saving our family's honor," she said calmly, watching the paper turn to ash. "A Kanna woman does not work for others. If you want to manage accounts, manage the kitchen expenses. If you want a package, I will give you an allowance every month. But you will not step out of that door for a paycheck. Akash, tell her." I looked at my husband, my partner, the man who promised to support my dreams. He cleared his throat and looked away. "Mira, Mom is right. We have enough money. Why do you need to work? Stay at home. Take care of us. It's better this way." At that moment, the economics gold medalist died inside me. The Mira who wanted to conquer the world was buried under the ashes of that letter. They say a house is made of bricks and beams, but a home is made of love and dreams. In the Kanna mansion, the dreams were being replaced by shadows. And the architect of those shadows was Ria. Ria had returned home permanently after her marriage ended. She didn't come back with sadness, she came back with a vengeance. She couldn't stand to see anyone else's life looking stable while hers was in ruins. To her, I wasn't a sister-in-law, I was a target. It started with small things. I would clean the living room and 10 minutes later Ria would accidentally knock over a vase or spill red wine on the white carpet. "Oh, Mira," she would shout, loud enough for Savitri Devi to hear. "Why are you so careless? You saw I was walking here. Are you trying to make me trip?" Savitri Devi would come rushing in, her eyes narrowing. "She's not careless, Ria. She's arrogant. She thinks because she has a degree she's above housework. Clean it up, Mira. Now. On your knees." I would kneel on the cold floor, scrubbing the stains, while Ria and Savitri sat on the sofa above me, sipping their fresh tea and discussing my lack of upbringing. I realized then that bitterness doesn't always come from a big explosion. It comes from the salt rubbed into small wounds every single day. Ria's biggest weapon wasn't her voice. It was her ability to twist the truth. She began to separate me from Akash. Every evening before Akash returned from the office, Ria would sit with him in the garden. From the kitchen window, I would watch them. She would lean in, whispering, looking distressed. Later, when Akash came to our room, he wouldn't look at me. "Mira, why did you talk back to Ria today?" he asked one night, his voice cold. "I didn't talk back, Akash. I barely spoke to her," I replied, my heart sinking. "Don't lie. She was crying. She said you taunted her about her failed marriage. She's already going through so much, and you're making it worse? Have some shame." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the words died in my throat. I looked at the man I loved. He had become a stranger who preferred the lies of his sister over the silence of his wife. I realized that in this house, the truth didn't matter. Only the narrative did. It was my 25th birthday. I didn't expect a party, but I hoped for a kind word. My parents had sent a small parcel, a handmade sweater my mother had knitted, and some of my favorite sweets. I found the parcel in the trash bin behind the kitchen. It was soaked in water, ruined. Ria was standing by the bin, filing her nails. "Oh, was that yours? I thought it was a package from a local vendor. It looked so cheap. I didn't think anyone in this house would own something so tacky. I threw it out to keep the hallway clean." That sweater was the last thing my mother had made before her eyesight failed. I picked it up, the wet wool heavy in my hands. I didn't cry. The bitterness had finally reached my heart, and it turned my tears into ice. That night, I didn't go to the dining table. I sat in the dark guest room. Akash came in, not to check on me, but to complain. "Mom is waiting for dinner. Why are you acting like a child? So what if a parcel got thrown away? I'll buy you 10 sweaters. Just stop this drama and come eat." I looked at him, and for the first time I didn't feel hurt. I felt pity. Pity for a man who could buy 10 sweaters, but couldn't understand the value of one mother's love. "I'm not hungry, Akash," I said quietly. "I've had enough of everything in this house." He slammed the door and left. I sat there in the silence, listening to the laughter of the family downstairs. I realized I was no longer a person to them, I was a shadow. And it was time for this shadow to start observing everything. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a house when a storm is brewing. It's not a peaceful silence. It's heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. After my birthday, I stopped expecting love. And when you stop expecting love, Your eyes begin to see things that love used to blind you from. I became a ghost in the Khanna mansion. I moved through the hallways without a sound. I served the tea, I cleaned the rooms, and I kept my head down. They thought I had finally been broken. They thought the lioness had been turned into a sheep. They were wrong. I was just listening. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a dry throat. Akash was fast asleep, his breathing heavy and indifferent. I walked toward the kitchen, my bare feet making no sound on the expensive marble. As I passed the study, I saw a sliver of light beneath the door. Then I heard a voice, sharp, panicked, and hushed. It was Ria. "I told you, Mom, it's not just a small amount. If I don't pay them by next week, they'll come to this house. They'll tell everyone." I froze against the wall. My heart was thumping so hard, I thought the portraits on the wall would hear it. "How could you be so stupid, Ria?" Savitri Devi's voice was a jagged whisper. "Gambling? Online betting? You've already lost your marriage, and now you want to lose our family's reputation?" "I thought I could win it back." Ria was sobbing now, but they were the tears of a trapped animal, not a grieving soul. "I owe 5 million. If Akash finds out, he'll lose his mind. You have to help me, Mom. You have to take it from the business accounts." "The accounts are audited, you fool," Savitri hissed. "I can't just take 5 million without Akash noticing. We need another way, a way that doesn't lead back to us." I stood in the darkness, the cold of the marble floor seeping into my bones. 5 million. Ria had gambled away a fortune while I was being scolded for wasting a few rupees on a cup of tea. "What about the locker?" Ria whispered. "The ancestral jewelry? Mira has the keys to the secondary locker where the heavy sets are kept." "No," Savitri replied. "If the jewelry goes missing while she has the keys, Akash will blame—" Wait. There was a long, terrifying silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in Savitri's mind. "Yes," Savitri said, her voice now chillingly calm. "If the jewelry goes missing, and Mira has the keys, and Mira's family has been struggling lately, Akash won't just blame her. He will throw her out. 2 problems solved with 1 stone. Ria, get the spare key from my cabinet." I retreated to my room, my mind spinning. The bitterness in my throat felt like acid. They weren't just treating me poorly, they were planning to destroy my character. They wanted to brand me a thief to cover up Ria's sins. I looked at Akash, sleeping peacefully. He was my husband. He was supposed to be my protector. But I realized that if his mother told him I was a thief, he wouldn't ask for proof. He would just ask me to leave. I realized then that I couldn't be a victim anymore. If I stayed a sheep, I would be slaughtered. That night I didn't cry. I sat by the window and watched the moon. "You want a thief?" I whispered into the darkness. "I will give you a detective." I knew where Ria kept her phone. I knew where Savitri kept her ledgers. For years, I had been the uneducated daughter-in-law who stayed in the kitchen. They forgot that I was a gold medalist in economics. I knew how to track money. I knew how to find what was hidden. The bitterness didn't hurt anymore. It gave me strength. It was the fuel I needed to start my own game. For the next 3 days, I acted as if I knew nothing. I was the perfect shadow. I served Savitri Devi her sugarless tea. I folded Ria's expensive clothes. I even smiled at Akash when he left for work. But inside, I was a clock, ticking down to the moment they would strike. I watched Ria. She was nervous. She couldn't sit still. Her eyes would constantly dart toward the heavy mahogany cupboard in the hallway, the one that held the secondary locker. On Thursday afternoon, Savitri Devi called me into her room. She looked tired, her face a mask of fake concern. "Mira," she said, her voice trembling slightly, I have a terrible headache. I need you to take the keys to the secondary locker and bring out the heavy emerald set. We need to send it for polishing before your cousin's wedding next week. I looked at the bunch of keys in her hand. They felt heavy, like lead. I knew that the moment I took those keys, the trap would be set. Yes, Margie, I said softly. I took the keys and walked to the cupboard. I opened the locker. The emerald set was there, shimmering in the dim light. But I noticed something else. 2 of the smaller gold bangles were already gone. Ria had already started bleeding the locker. I took the emerald set, locked the cupboard, and handed the set to Savitri. I kept the keys on her bedside table, just as she had instructed. Leave them there, Mira, she whispered, closing her eyes. I will put them away later. I walked out, but I didn't go to the kitchen. I went to the hallway and hid behind the velvet curtains. 5 minutes later, I saw a shadow move. It was Ria. She grabbed the keys from her mother's table, rushed to the locker, and emptied the remaining gold into a velvet bag. The explosion happened at 8 p.m., just as Akash walked through the front door. A scream echoed from the hallway. It was Savitri Devi. Akash! Ria! Come quickly! Oh my God! We all rushed to the hallway. Savitri was standing by the open cupboard, her hand over her heart. The secondary locker was gaping open, empty. The ancestral gold! The diamonds! They're all gone! Savitri wailed. Akash's face turned pale. How? Who had the keys, Mom? Savitri turned her tear-filled eyes toward me. The look in her eyes wasn't grief, it was victory. I gave the keys to Mira this afternoon, she whispered. I told her to bring the emeralds. I fell asleep, and when I woke up, the keys were still on my table, but the locker was like this. Akash turned to me. The trust that should have been there, the years we spent together, vanished in a second. Mira? His voice was a low growl. Did you lock it? I did, Akash, I said, my voice steady. Then where is the gold? Ria stepped forward, her voice high and accusatory. Wait, didn't your brother just start a new business? And didn't your mother need surgery last month? How convenient that our gold disappears just when your family needs it most. Check her room, Savitri commanded. Check her suitcases. They didn't just check my room, they trashed it. Akash stood there, watching his sister throw my clothes out of the wardrobe. And then Ria reached for my old college backpack, the one I kept at the very top. She pulled it down, unzipped it, and turned it upside down. Clink, clink, clink. 2 heavy gold necklaces and a pair of diamond earrings fell onto the floor, shining mockingly against the rug. The silence that followed was deafening. Akash looked at the gold, then at me. His eyes were full of a disgust so deep it felt like a physical blow. I gave you everything, Mira, he whispered, his voice trembling with rage. I gave you this name, this house, and you stole from my mother? To give to your poor parents? I didn't put those there, Akash, I said. Slap. The sound echoed through the house. My head snapped to the side. Akash had never raised a hand to me. The bitterness in my mouth finally turned to the taste of blood. Get out, he said, pointing to the door. I don't want a thief in my bed. Pack your things and leave, now. I looked at Savitri. She was smirking behind her handkerchief. I looked at Ria. She was clutching her phone, probably checking the value of the gold she had hidden elsewhere. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I wiped the blood from my lip and looked Akash straight in the eye. I will leave, Akash, but remember this moment, because when you find out who the real thief is, you won't be able to afford the price of my forgiveness. I walked out of the Khanna mansion with 1 suitcase and a heart that felt like it had been turned into stone. The rain was pouring, cold and unforgiving, soaking through my clothes. I didn't call my parents. How could I? How could I tell them that their daughter, who had once been their pride, was now branded a thief? I walked for hours until my feet bled. I found a small, cheap hostel in the corner of the city. As I sat on the narrow, creaking bed, the silence was louder than the thunder outside. Most women would have broken. Most would have cried until their eyes were swollen. But I opened my suitcase. At the very bottom, hidden inside the lining, was a small black USB drive and a voice recorder. You see, I had known. The night I heard them whispering in the study, I hadn't just listened. The next morning, while Ria was at the gym and Savitri was at the temple, I had placed a tiny button-sized camera in the hallway, hidden inside the mouth of the antique lion statue facing the locker. I had also placed a recording device under the sofa in the study. I pulled out my old laptop. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the chilling anticipation of the truth. I plugged in the drive. The video was clear. It showed me taking the emeralds and locking the cupboard. It showed me leaving, and then it showed Ria. It showed her panicked face, her frantic hands as she emptied the gold into her bag. It showed her taking 2 necklaces and walking toward my room to plant them. But there was more. The audio from the study was the final nail in their coffin. I put on my headphones. The recording from that afternoon played back. Is it done, Ria? Savitri's voice was clear. Yes, Mom. I put the necklaces in her backpack. Akash will never suspect a thing. But, Mom, the money? The man from the betting agency called again. He wants the 5 million by tomorrow. Don't worry, Savitri replied. Once Mira is gone, I will tell Akash we need to sell some of the remaining ancestral gold to invest in a new venture. He trusts me blindly. He will give me the power of attorney. You'll have your money, and I'll finally have peace in this house. I closed the laptop. The bitterness in my mouth was gone, replaced by a cold, metallic taste of justice. They hadn't just stolen gold. They had stolen my life, my dignity, and my husband's soul. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't go to them. I needed to wait. I needed them to think they had won. I took a small job at a local library, spending my nights in that cramped hostel room, watching the files over and over. I watched Akash through social media. He looked miserable. His posts were full of anger and quotes about betrayal. He was mourning a version of me that he had killed with his own hand. Ria, on the other hand, was celebrating. I saw photos of her at expensive boutiques, her smile wide and fake. She thought the storm had passed. She didn't know that I was the storm. On the 15th day, I received a legal notice, a divorce petition. Akash wanted to end it all. He wanted to erase me from his life as if I were a smudge of dirt on his expensive suit. I held the paper in my hand and laughed. It was a hollow, haunting sound that echoed in the small room. You want a divorce, Akash? I whispered. I will give you a divorce. But first, I will give you the truth. And the truth is going to burn your world down. It was the evening of Savitri Devi's 60th birthday. The Khanna mansion was glowing with lights. Flowers decorated every pillar, and the scent of expensive perfume filled the air. Akash stood in the center of the hall wearing a black suit, greeting the elite of the city. He looked successful, but if you looked closely at his eyes, they were hollow. Ria was there too, draped in a new diamond necklace, one I recognized instantly. It was from the stolen collection. She thought she was safe. She thought the thief was rotting in some slum. The heavy oak doors of the hall creaked open. The chatter died down. I walked in. I wasn't wearing the heavy silk saris they had forced me to wear. I was wearing a simple, sharp white suit. My hair was tied back. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a judge. Akash froze. His glass of champagne trembled in his hand. Savitri Devi's face turned from pale to ashen. "Meera?" Akash whispered, his voice cracking. "How dare you show your face here? Security!" "Wait, Akash," I said, my voice projecting to every corner of the room. "I'm not here to beg. I'm here to give your mother her birthday gift. Don't you want to see what I brought?" Before anyone could move, I walked to the tech booth where the Family Memories slideshow was supposed to play. I pushed the technician aside and plugged in my drive. "Akash, you once told me that the Khannas value honor above all else," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Let's see what your honor looks like behind closed doors." The giant projector screen lit up. It wasn't photos of Savitri's childhood, it was the video. The guests gasped. The room went silent as they watched Ria, their perfect daughter, frantically stuffing gold into her bag. Then the screen split. On the other side, the audio began to play. "Don't worry, Ria. Akash trusts me blindly. He will give me the power of attorney. We will frame Meera and get rid of her." The recording played Savitri's cold, calculated voice for everyone to hear. The elite guests began to whisper. The embarrassment was thick enough to touch. Akash turned to his mother. His face was a mask of pure horror. "Mom, is this true?" Savitri tried to speak, but her voice failed her. She looked at the floor. Ria tried to run toward the screen to pull the plug, but she tripped over her own heavy gown, falling at the feet of the very people she was trying to impress. "I didn't steal your gold, Akash," I said, walking toward him. "I stole your illusions. I showed you that the people you trusted most were the ones who were bleeding you dry." I pulled out the divorce papers he had sent me. I placed them on the table and signed them right there, in front of everyone. "You wanted this divorce because you thought I was a thief. I'm signing it because I realized I was married to a coward. A man who couldn't protect his wife from his own shadow doesn't deserve her light." I threw the pen on the papers. "Keep the house, Akash. Keep the gold. But remember, every time you look at your mother or your sister, you will see the faces of the people who destroyed your home. That bitterness will be your companion for the rest of your life." I turned around and walked out. I didn't look back to see Akash falling to his knees. I didn't look back to hear Savitri's screams or Ria's excuses. As I stepped out of the gates, the sun was beginning to rise. The air felt fresh. For the first time in 10 years, the bitterness in my throat was gone. I was Meera again, and I was finally, beautifully free.